Marisol Himmel is an educational puppeteer and ventriloquist and the creator of Moddy Puppets, a puppet company that explores new ways to use puppetry in education. I talk with Marisol about her puppetry journey, her explorations of different styles of puppetry, her collaborations with other artists, and much more on this episode of Under the Puppet. You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. Welcome to the show that is preserving puppetry through the personal stories of professional puppeteers. My name is Grant Pachoco, and this is Under the Puppet. Well, Marisol Himmel, welcome to Under the Puppet.
Thank you so much for having me. I feel like one of those long-time listener, first-time callers.
Well, I'm super excited to get to talk to you. I've been a big fan of your work for many, many years, and we've got to meet a few times. So I'm excited to learn even more about you, because even in those times we met, it's been very brief,
Right.
So I'm excited to learn about your career. I always start by asking, do you remember your first exposure to puppetry, the first time you saw puppets?
I do, but I didn't think it was puppetry. To me, it was alive. It was Topo Gigio on television in Mexico. He had a whole show. Right before bed, there was a whole song that we would sing. Even when the show wasn't on, my parents and I would, sing it together before bed. And so Topo Gigio in my house was real. Like, he existed. And I was like, when can we go see him? When can we go see him? Of course, I had no idea that there were at least 3 people wearing velvet manipulating him. I have no idea. To this day, I even have like the patent up on one of my walls of how he's made and everything, and it's just magical. I love it.
And when you were growing up, were you, because of Topo Gigio, were you like playing with puppets, or were you wanting to be a performer? What were you creative when you were growing up?
I would say yes to being creative growing up. The first like puppet that I had in my hands was they used to have back in the 80s they looked like little potatoes, honestly. It was pantyhose stuffed with stuffing, and it was like needle sculpted. It was this little, I don't even know what the name of the dolls were, but you would put your hand in it and move it around and make it wiggle like a little baby. And I was mesmerized when my grandma had it, when my aunts had it, they would play with it. And that was like the first thing. And then of course, when I had it on, I was like, it's not doing it. It's not, what is it? So that was the first time I had like an actual puppet on my hand. But honestly, puppetry wasn't really on my radar. I mean, it was definitely part of my childhood. I grew up with Lamb Chop's Play Along and Allegra's Window, and that one I was a little bit older, but I had younger siblings, so puppetry was kind of always in the periphery, but it was never something that I was like aiming toward.
Well, and you are you're a very talented like artist in drawing and craft stuff. Were you doing that as a kid as well? Were you drawing and doing art stuff?
That I was doing a lot of. Yeah, my mom was actually really cool about letting us take over all the recyclables and getting us material when she could, and letting us kind of have our, as much fun as we wanted with all the supplies. And her one rule was like, just clean up after. So my sisters and I would make videos, and we would put on circus performances. And yeah, we definitely did a lot of arts and crafts and drawing and a lot of that growing up.
Were your parents creative at all, or did you come from a creative family?
I think my parents, I got glimpses of their creativity, but we were, an immigrant family. They were just working a lot all the time. So my dad still does play music. He played guitar with his brothers. They would go and play sometimes for work at restaurants and different things. My mom, I got a really cool glimpse that she does have some creativity in her when she helped me out with like school projects. But that was honestly the only times that I got to really see it on display. I didn't really get to see or experience their full creativity. Like I said, they were just busy being parents.
Yeah. And were any of your siblings creative as well? Did they get into the arts?
Yeah, they both are. I have 2 younger sisters, and the one after me, she does videos. She's on TikTok. She does all kinds of stuff. And the little one is very musical. She's the one that plays guitar. She sings. They're both very creative and very talented.
And were you involved in performing arts like in high school and college?
I wanted to be so much. So the high school that I went to had this great auditorium that I remember going to on field trips when I was a kid, and I was excited to get to be a part of that. And then I get to that actual high school, because that was the one I was assigned to, and it turns out that they didn't use the auditorium. They would rent it out for those field trips and things. So it didn't actually have a drama department or anything. We had like a little theater that was kind of abandoned. One of the teachers was trying to bring it up, but it didn't have the backing or the budget. So it wasn't what I had wished it would be. And I did my utmost. I think there were maybe 6 of us in the drama club, and we did what we could. And we got to put on a play for an elementary school that we wrote ourselves. It was called Jack and the Beans Talk. And it was everything you probably imagined it to be for.
Well, I'm imagining puppets right now with the beans talking.
No, 0 puppets. It was a $30 budget. We had cardboard boxes that we painted to be the beans, and our big dramatic moment was that you flipped it around, and they were wearing tuxedos, and they did a little can dance as a finale. So we did what we could, and we had a lot of fun doing it. But no, it was not what I had hoped it would be, at least not in high school.
And then what about, did you attend college, university? Did you study arts in your college years?
I didn't, no. So I was a communications major, and I mostly did foreign languages. I didn't even get to finish college, to be honest. So that was it. It was a few classes here and there, a few of my, some science classes, some math classes, of course. But no, I never got any of that. So it was all just self-taught and picked up here and there and pieced together.
Well, according to your website, which I love your website, you talk about how your puppetry journey sort of started when you were a nanny, right?
It did, yeah.
Yeah, can you talk about how that happened?
Yeah, I had been running an after-school program for a few years, but that means that the mornings were wide open. So a friend of mine says, hey, do you think you could help me to homeschool my kids? We just transitioned to homeschool. They had a situation where they had to homeschool. So I said, well, I've never done it before, but let's see what we can do. And thankfully, the school that they had teamed up with and partnered with, the charter school, gave a whole curriculum. Everything was all set. I just kind of had to be the teacher for all of that. So then we were probably in a couple of months of me homeschooling the kids and nannying. And the little girl who was in first grade at the time, she just started having a bunch of different behavior issues, I guess they would be. But it was just normal kid stuff. It was like she would interrupt a lot, that kind of thing. And her mom's like, I don't know. I can't figure out how to get through to her. Like, we've talked about it. She's like, see if you can think of something. I was like, okay. So then one day at lunch, we were playing around with some drawings, and she had drawn a little girl and I had drawn a little girl, and we were kind of chatting and making them talk. And I kept interrupting with the little paper puppet and everything. And so it kind of started, like, the idea was there. But as we were playing around with this, where I was like, I'm not the one interrupting. It's the paper kid. It's the little paper doll. She was having fun with it because I was doing little voices and everything. And so we were just having a grand old time. And at the end of it, she puts it down and she goes, I wish she was real. And I'm like, yeah, that'd be fun, huh? Yeah, I wish she was real too. And she's like, no, like, I really wish she was real. And she runs in her room. She's like, and she could wear this and she could wear this other thing. She pulls out a little pair of pants and a t-shirt and everything. And I'm just like, I have no idea what you want me to do with this. But I talked to her mom about it. I said, do you think I could take this and see if I can create, I don't know, some kind of a doll or something based off of that little drawing that she made? She goes, sure, go ahead. And so I told the kid, I was like, how do you feel about if we made a puppet? And she just lit up. She's like, yes, a puppet. Okay. So at the time, this was 2015, I believe, there was one video that I found on YouTube on how to make like a Muppet style puppet. And I did what I could. I found one pattern on Pinterest that gave me a big old head, but it worked. It was enough. And I had no idea what I was doing. I stuffed the pants and I glued them to some shoes from the thrift store. I stuffed the shirt. So it's this bloated, puffy puppet with a big old head. And then I was so proud of myself because I had figured out I could use plastic spoons to make the eyeballs. And I put them on the table and I painted them up and I got them ready. But then because I had them on a flat surface, when I went to put it on the round surface of the puppet's the head, the eyes ended up pointing in different directions. So it was chaos, but it was fun to do, and the kid loved it. We ended up taking this puppet everywhere. We were, anytime that we were doing errands or having to go run to the store or anything, she's like, can Alexa come? Oh, because at the time, the Alexa robot didn't exist yet. That was the name that we came up with for this little doll. So the Alexa doll came all over with us. We went to Target in one of those double shopping carts. So Alexa would come with us to Target with the double shopping carts. I had the 6-year-old, I had the puppet, I had her older brother, and we were going down the store, and people, we got funny looks and everything. But it worked so well with that interrupting thing that we were dealing with just having different lessons go through the puppet instead of through me, because I guess there's just so much that kids learn from each other. And since we didn't have access to other kids with her being homeschooled, that's kind of where I realized just the power of puppetry and being able to connect with kids on another level.
Yeah, and did that sort of lead you to wanting to, learn to build more puppets and keep creating that with puppetry?
It did, absolutely, because, with all of the different mess ups as we were building this puppet, I was like, oh, I could do that better. I could do that better. And then my mom ended up giving me her old sewing machine. And she says, well, I haven't used it in years. See if you can use it to fix up the puppet. She kind of gave me some pointers on how to make at least some tubes for the legs so that they could be inside the pants instead of the pants just being stuffed. And so from there, it just kind of took off. I fell in love with building puppets. And also at the time, I started working with a local artist. And she says, wait, you're building puppets? I want one. So once a week, I was going over and helping her out. And so she commissioned basically my first paid puppet. And she wanted a puppet of herself. So that was Connie Rad that was created for some different events and different things that she did. And so we did some videos together. I ended up making another puppet because she was going to do a collaboration with a different artist. So we made a puppet of him. And little by little, people started finding out, and they're like, well, I want one. I want one. And so it just grew kind of on its own, and I was having so much fun with it, and I never expected it to become what it did.
And did you in those early days get involved with the local guild, the San Francisco Guild, or did that come later to hook up with them?
That I didn't even realize that existed until I believe it was like 2018. So it had been a couple years since I had started building. I had already built maybe a dozen puppets. 10 of them had been commissioned puppets. So I was building them just kind of on my own and finding books and things. And that's when trying to do research, find out some more about like building puppets. That's how I came across the guild, the San Francisco Bay Area Puppeteers Guild. And as soon as I signed up, I was like, these are my people. This is amazing. It was just great.
I wanted to ask, we'll talk about the guild more, but I wanted to ask, you were doing all these commissions. How did you decide how much to charge for? Because I know for artists, that's a difficult thing to try and figure out. So, I remember my first puppet, I was like, oh yeah, I could build it for $100. And then later on, I'm like, why did you say $100? But like, what were you charging in those early days?
Right. Yeah, that was very tough. It's still a tough thing for me. But because I was working for an artist and she was very good about pricing her stuff as an artist, and that was how she was making her living. She's like, I'm going to pay you $400. She's like, don't tell me how much you bought your stuff for. It's $400 so that you can work on your craft. I was like, I am not going to say no. And then when she started telling people where she got her puppet, she would give them that price. So thankfully I had that help from her, that she recognized the amount of work that goes into it and everything. And she's like, no, you're getting people to essentially, she's like, you're eventually going to charge more, but for now you need them to fund your learning. And that's going to take some time, and it's going to take some effort, and you're going to get faster, you're going to get better, and you'll be able to charge more as a result. But in the meantime, don't underestimate what you're bringing to the table. And
I love it.
That was a really valuable lesson.
Yeah, absolutely. And were you making videos? Did you start making videos with Alexa during this time, or did that come later?
That came later. Yeah. The
Okay.
Alexa puppet was basically just for that little girl. That was that first one. And of course, once I was comfortable with the build process, maybe about a year and a half after that first one, I built the second version of Alexa, which is the one that I use now. And she's actually due for a revamp because that puppet's been around for 8 years or so. So she could do with a little tune up. She's already gotten new arms, new legs and everything, but it's time to redo that same character into a new puppet. But the videos for Alexa didn't start until maybe 2018. My husband ended up getting laid off, and we had a month between his old job and his new job where they were going through all the interviews and the background checks and all of that. So I said, well, you got some time off. I've got some time off. It's the summer. I wasn't working with the kids at the time. And so I said, why don't you help me with this puppet project I've been thinking of? And up until then, I had been trying to film, but I don't know if you've tried to film puppets by yourself. It's a whole setup and the camera and adjusting, and it's a whole thing. So I said it would be so helpful to have that second person in the room to adjust and tell me, okay, go this way, go that way. And I hadn't learned how to do monitor work yet. So it was all just guessing and trying to see how the setup should be. So a lot of experimenting. And that was the first video that we did we called it Alexa's Room. And it was all just like, it's okay to be bored. That's when ideas come. And you might be inspired by something you see just around you that maybe you've already looked at a million times. And you see it again with a new set of eyes, and all of a sudden. So it was Alexa kind of being led through that by this pretend little furry French friend named Florange. And he kind of tells her, look around you. What do you see? Is there anything that you could use that you already have? And so she makes a little paper boat. And that's what the video is all about. So that was fun. We spent, I think, a week making that, and then another week editing it and everything. And put it up on YouTube, and it did okay, but it was nothing. It was just for fun. It was just an experiment, but we learned a lot through that process. So
Yeah, well, and I wanted to, kind of dovetail on what you were saying about how you're ready for Alexa to have another revamp, in the puppet wise, is in that time you also become a better puppeteer. So you realize like, oh, if the puppet could do this, I would be able to do this better. And I think it's the same thing with making videos. Like you probably learned a lot in that first video where you're like, okay, the next time we do this, we're going to do it this way. Cause there's that thing about 10,000 hours to become an expert at something that you do. And you have to
Right.
get those hours. You have to do it.
Oh, absolutely. And then you also see the longevity of certain materials. You see like what stuff definitely you shouldn't use inside of a puppet, like duct tape, because your hand comes out all gummy and sticky eventually. Just different things that you start to piece together, like, okay, I will definitely not be doing that again. And yeah, it's just putting in the time, like you said.
Well, there's so much stuff I want to talk to you about because I'm really excited about all the things you've done. If people wanted to go back and look, is that first Alexa video still on your YouTube channel? Can they see that?
Yeah, no, it's still
Okay.
up. It's still up. Uh-huh.
Yeah, I know some people are like, "Oh no, I took my first one down because it was," but I think it's to me it's inspiring to see how far someone, to see the progress over time. So,
Absolutely. And actually, now that I think about it, we had done. So while I was filming by myself, I had been asked by a musician couple who was writing an album for their kids. And they said, could you take this song and do a little film for us? And that was just me at the park with the puppet. And it was, again, just kind of a mess, but it was just me trying to figure out all the angles and everything. And then I ended up roping my sister into it, so that we did get one shot that kind of looks decent. So we had been kind of building up. And like you said, those videos, those very first ones, as rough and choppy as they are, I love to see the comparison. And I use it with my students as well, because I think at first you're just so intimidated by, you see what you would like to be and you don't know the steps to get there. And it's all in the process. It's all in the just starting, in the jumping in, as messy as it's going to be, and then finding your way from there. So
yeah, I love it. I'm 100% behind that as well. I wanted to ask, in 2018, you started studying ventriloquism. Can you talk about, was it the lamb chop influence that made you want to do that, or what made you go down that road?
that one was so about a year after I had started nannying these kids, their mom was saying that we should set up some kind of a weekly small group for kids. And we did. We had about 6 kids and the puppet, and we were doing science and English and art. And it grew from there. We ended up renting a community center. We filled the community center. People were asking for a second day of it. And once I realized that for the price of renting the community center twice a week, I could just have a location of my own. So we we leased a commercial space, and I got all the licensing and everything. I went through all that summer. And so we had just set up and opened, and we were interviewed on the local morning show. So a ventriloquist coach who teaches the pageant girls a talent, basically, for their pageant. He had seen that video of the morning show where they interviewed me about my new program and how I incorporate puppets. And he says, would you like to learn ventriloquism? And at first I was like, that's a little bit bizarre. I think I'm okay. People are looking at the puppet and not at me anyway. And he's like, well, but because you have the kids there, it would really sell it if you were able to make the puppet do the talking. And I was like, oh yeah, like, you're not wrong there. So I had started that September of 2019. And then when the pandemic hit, a few months later, I had all the time in the world to practice. So that's where that came from. And it ended up being a really fun and cool thing. And of course, we were all doing it virtually, doing school online and going live. So it wasn't as big of a like, oh, I see your lips moving, because there was glitches in the technology, in the Zoom calls or everything. So I could hide it a lot better. So then by the time we came out of the pandemic, and of course we were wearing masks too, so that helped. So I had a very nice, easy on-ramp to it. And that's kind of how the ventriloquism started. And now it's just what I do. Like I put the puppet on and I don't even think about what my face is doing. So
Well, and you kind of did it as I watched one of your videos on your channel because you kind of talk about ventriloquism. You almost did it as a correspondence course, but like a modern day thing where you would video yourself and send it in, right?
yeah, that's exactly it. Because he was located, he travels around a lot, again, for those pageants. And so he was just like, whenever you get a chance, it wasn't anything official. He never charged me for anything. He just said, whenever you get an opportunity, here's what I would like you to practice on, focus on these letters. And then I would send him a video. And then he would kind of tweak it or say, give me a different technique to try or different way to do it. And little by little, with those little modifications and adjustments as we went, then I would send him more stuff. And then I still haven't actually completed what he would like me to do, which is to have two puppets on at once, which my brain just, I don't know. I'm getting too old for that stuff. So
What would you say was the biggest challenge learning ventriloquism? I mean, you said you had sort of an easy on ramp, but what was like sort of your biggest hurdle to get over?
probably my own ideas of it. Like, it's very weird. It's a very weird thing to do. So I was already known as the weird kid, and I was trying to do everything to not go even further. And then at some point I was like, you know what, let's just embrace it. I'm the weird kid. Let's just go with it. And it's been great. People are a lot more accepting of it once you own it, once you are who you are. People enjoy that a lot more than you trying to pretend to not be that.
And did it open up things you could do with the puppets a little bit more by learning ventriloquism? Like, what was your teacher correct in like, oh, it makes it more believable if it's just the puppet talking.
It does, yeah, and especially with some of the younger kids, because in my homeschool program that I run, I've got kids from all ages. So I have a group of littles that are kinder through second, and then I've got middles who are third through sixth, and then I even work with teenagers. And of course, they don't really interact with the puppets as much, but they learn how to do puppet builds and create their own shows and things like that in my program. But with the littles in particular, the quiet ones, for whatever reason, they were really drawn to talking to the puppet. And I've had a couple instances where they've come up and they're like, Miss Moddy, can I please speak to Alexa? And I go, yeah, sure, okay. And they're like, no, but just Alexa. So, I kind of have to turn around and give them their privacy and let them just have a little chat. And they'll tell her about a bully that's bugging them, or they'll tell them about different worries that they have about things. And it's fascinating to see that because of that disconnect that the ventriloquism has created, where they really think that the puppet is the one that's talking. And so it's this whole separate entity from me. Whereas before it was like, oh, we see the puppet and we see you talking and we get what's going on and we'll play along. But now it just became more real for them.
Excellent. How long did you study before you felt like, okay, I can do this in front of people?
Not enough. Let's say that. Not enough. I think I am very much like, hey, I learned a thing. Let me show you, even if it was just 5 minutes ago. So that's never been a block for me to show a skill. So I had started doing ventriloquism in September of 2019, and I believe we put on a children's theater performance in December. So just a few months later, and I used Alexa as like our intro MC to the show. And so I was doing ventriloquism to an audience of, I don't know, maybe 100 parents or so. So yeah, not very
Right
much.
away. I
Right
love it.
away. Yeah.
I love it. Jump in.
Yes.
Well, I want to talk to you about. I think this might be like the first project that I came across. This project on YouTube, and it was Alonzo, and
Yeah.
you have a live hand puppet doing sign language, and when I saw it, I was like, oh, this is great! Like this is a really fun use. So can you talk about how sort of Alonzo developed.
Yeah. So, because of my background in communications and all these foreign languages, so I speak Spanish, I speak French, I know sign language, I speak English, of course. But I was like, there's got to be a way to use this and teach this, and puppets really help with that as well because relationships are what really drive kids to communicate. And so, especially, I did a lot of research, like in case my husband and I ended up having kids, which we don't have any kids of our own, but if we did, I was worried, like, how would I incorporate that? My husband is French, I'm Mexican. How do we keep both of those languages in a child's mind without getting them all confused? And so, in my research, I found that the families that succeed in that are the ones that the one parent that speaks, like, for example, in my case, I would be the one speaking Spanish to my child, and my husband would speak French to our child, and is usually how that stays more clear in their mind because of the relationship. So I just transposed that to puppetry, and I said, okay, well, they have to have a specific puppet for each language. So that's where Florange, the furry French friend, came from. And Florange speaks French, and if they want to speak to Florange, they have to use the French that they're learning in class. And then when they learn to sew their own little Florange puppet to make it speak, it only speaks French. Well, that's Florange. He has to speak French. Same thing with Julio. I have a little owl, an owl from the Sonoran Desert who only speaks Spanish. And if they want to talk to Julio, they have to speak in Spanish. And so I was like, okay, well, we need somebody for the sign language that I want to teach as well. And so that's where I started to research, are there any puppets for sign language? And there are some live hand puppets that kind of sit in your lap, but I didn't see any that I particularly wanted to buy. So I was like, I'll see about making my own. So that's what my first live hand puppet was for. And I tried to figure out, how can I, as only one person, manipulate this puppet? But it was very stiff. And the thing about sign language is you need your entire face. It's very expressive that way as well. So I was like, okay, I'll bring somebody on that can do the face. Well, here's the thing. If you're using all these humans, and I had made Alonzo a humanoid puppet, there's really no point. And I didn't learn this until I talked to Lee Armstrong, my puppeteer friend and mentor, who said, well, you always have to ask yourself, like, why puppets, right? And she said, well, if you have a humanoid puppet that's doing sign language, why don't you just have a human that's doing sign language? You don't need a puppet in that case. And it made so much sense. The kids weren't taking to it. He wasn't, like, the videos that I was putting out on it, not doing well. And so she recommended do an animal, do a little creature maybe that has, little hands. So that project has been in the works for some time, and it's actually finally coming to fruition this school year in the form of a raccoon puppet, because they also have those little hands that can move around. Yeah. And he's going to be part of this whole curriculum I've got set up about this imaginary forest called Whimsy Woods. So that's going to be coming out pretty soon here once the school year kicks off. And I do also incorporate the kids' input and feedback to move those projects forward. So when Alonzo didn't really do well, I had kind of put him to the side, but I was also contacted by an organization in Oregon, I believe, that does a lot of media for the deaf. And so they're interested in that. So then I said, you know what? This didn't work. It didn't work with my hearing kids. It didn't work with my deaf kids. Let me come up with something better. And that's what really drove me to explore and look into what else could we do. So there's a whole story behind Whimsy Woods. There's a whole story behind this raccoon. And like I said, that's been in the works for a few years now. But it wasn't until I was contacted by that organization that I was like, oh, there is an interest in this. This Alonzo puppet just isn't the way to go about it. Yeah, there's just so many different ways you can take it. So.
Yeah, I love it's such a good lesson because, there'll be times where, like, okay, I'm going to do this video and this video is going to be like this. And then when I put it on the internet, people are going to love it. Like, this is the greatest thing. And then you put out the first one, like, okay, well, maybe I'll do the second one and the third. And you're like, okay, the people aren't. And I love that like, my kind of personality is just be depressed about it for months and never want to work again. But I love that you were like, okay, this isn't right, but we can change this because it's still there. And I think that's just a great lesson for people, including me, to hear.
Yeah. And not to say that I wasn't depressed for a week, just being like, well, why didn't this work? I spent so much time on this puppet. It was one of my better puppets. Up until then, I had incorporated all of the build skills that I had acquired it was really comfortable. It's good it moves well and everything. Even, the hands, everything, it worked really well. It just didn't work for the project that we had in mind. So I ended up sending him off. My puppet coach, Jeff, had a different student that didn't have a puppet yet. And so Alonzo is now living with her. And yeah, it was a way to give back as well, and further another puppeteer's career. So hopefully we'll see Alonzo in the future doing something else.
Excellent. Well, and during the pandemic, you continued to create videos. I mean, we talked about pandemic earlier, but that's where Alexa's Dinosaur Club started, right?
Right. So because of that first video where we did Alexa's room, I already had a lot of the stuff for the set for that we were using in the classroom. And because our classroom was available and there were no kids in it during the pandemic, and I was teaching from it, but I had all this space, I turned a portion of the room into Alexa's room. So we brought in all the stuff that we had used for the original video. And it was just a way to connect with the kids and be like, hey, we're still here. We're just going to sit through all of this, wait the pandemic out. But Alexa's still here. She's waiting for you. And I had, before we transitioned to the Zoom virtual classroom, there was maybe a couple of weeks, I think, where we weren't sure what was going to happen. We weren't sure how long it was going to last, how long the lockdown was. And so I was just going live on Instagram. And that's where the Alexa's room thing. So first we started off just with the classroom. Once we realized it was going to go longer, we set it up as Alexa's room. And during one of those lives, one of the kids had taken over their mom's Instagram chat and was just talking about dinosaurs and dinosaurs this. And so the conversation kept going. Other people were chiming in on dinosaurs as well. And we're like, well, let's just, we can do a dinosaur club. We can talk about dinosaurs next time we go live. And it just kind of grew from there. I found an artist in Mexico who did these adorable drawings of dinosaurs, of himself playing with dinosaurs. And I contacted him and I said, do you think you could do drawings of my little character Alexa interacting with dinosaurs? And he said, oh, absolutely, yes. So he started creating all these drawings of Alexa interacting with different dinosaurs. We would vote to see which dinosaur would be the dinosaur of the month. And then when one of the kids in the club, and it wasn't unofficial, like there was no sign up or anything. It was just whoever logged into Instagram that day and was chatting with us. But then they started requesting like, oh, we need t-shirts. Oh, we need, stickers, and we need this and that. And so it grew from there. And at one point, one of the kids said, Miss Moddy, we need to do the Bajatosaurus. The Bajatosaurus is like this really cool dinosaur with spikes and everything. And at this point, I don't know anything about dinosaurs. I'm researching it for every single episode of Alexa's Room that we're doing. And so I'm like, okay, cool, Bajatosaurus. Well, it turns out it had just been discovered, I think, in 2018 or so. And so I looked up the paleontologist on Facebook. He's in Argentina. I sent him a message. I said, hey, I have a little funny puppet dinosaur club where my puppet is the president, and one of the kids suggested we do the Bajatosaurus. Would you be interested in doing a Zoom with us? And he said yes, absolutely. So we went live on Zoom. I had the kid that had suggested the Bajatosaurus. He only spoke English. The paleontologist only spoke Spanish. I had Alexa, so I was doing ventriloquism. I was translating and talking, and I don't know. At one point, I was just kind of like watching this whole thing happen. Like, what even is my life? How did I get here? But it was amazing. It was such a cool conversation and just such a cool experience. And yeah, I never expected that to come. But you never know. You follow those, little curiosity streams, and you never know where it'll lead you.
Yeah, one thing I love about your projects too is because it's something I loved as a kid. Like I loved if you watch something, the internet wasn't around when I was a kid, but I love something when you watch something on TV. Maybe it was PBS, maybe it was something, and then they were like, "Oh, send away for this thing," and then you would get like a magazine or you would get an activity book or whatever. And what I love about your projects is that you kind of add these elements to your projects where it's like, "Oh, you can go to my website and download this color sheet or this activity that you can cut out and you can do yourself." Was that something that has always been there from the start? Like once you started making these videos?
I think so. I think because I grew up with that too. I have all of those different Scruff, McGruff, Chicago, Illinois, and all of the different addresses in my mind, like the Zoom, not the Zoom program now, but the one that used to be on PBS where the kids did all these activities and you could send in, they had the whole, 2, 1, 3, 4, those little jingles are all in my mind. And I'm like, how can we bring that back? That was so much fun. I loved being able to sign up for things. And I was part of like the Burger King Kids Club, and I would get, the magazines, like you said. And so, especially during the pandemic when everyone was so isolated, like, how do we connect again? How do we make those moments happen? So having the kids mail in their drawing and then putting their drawing up on Alexa's wall and for them to see it. And then eventually the wall was covered. I mean, we had all these drawings of all these different dinosaurs. And then we had actual artists that were sending us stuff. You know, we had Eva from Creatorosity. We had Eric Scales that also sent a dinosaur picture. It was a dinosaur on rollerblades. And so to have adults and children all on the same wall, the same art gallery, it was just really unifying. It was really cool to be able to do that and to put it all up and see it all together.
Yeah, I love it. I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of that sort of thing. One thing I love is, we talked about how you kind of filmed your first video, is that looking through all the videos on your YouTube channel, which I'll have a link to in the show notes, so people definitely go check it out and subscribe. But you have Alexa doing a lot of fun things, like riding a tricycle or a big wheel bike. I don't know if that's technically a tricycle, but anyway, do you like coming up with these new ways of like, how can we shoot Alexa to make it look like she's riding on a bike?
Absolutely. I think that's the most fun of getting into the puppetry world is how you start to watch, the Muppet movies, and you start to see all these other things that already exist. And you're like, wait a minute. I had never thought about it before. How did they do that? Because before it was just like, okay, you're just consuming. But once you're in it and you see the behind the scenes, I don't know. I've just been captivated by the entire puppetry arts. So I had to try. I had to experiment. And so once those wheels started turning in my head, I had to see those wheels turning in real life. So we were able to make that happen. It was really fun.
Do you think that's the most complicated shot you've done, or do you have another shot that you're like, oh no, this one was like a real headache to do?
Oh man. Let's see. We had one. We did, my sister and I and a friend of ours that we roped in as well. We did a video, kind of a little promo for a ceramic artist. He does ceramics that look like cardboard. So it's all clay. It's all, he does this. He makes everything look like it's made out of cardboard, but it's all pottery. And so he had sent us a mug, and we were doing a video where Alexa makes a mug. She sees the mug, the ceramic mug. My sister's drinking out of it, and she goes, "Oh, cool! I'm gonna have my orange juice out of one too." So she grabs a cardboard box and she's cutting, and there's like little bits of cardboard flying everywhere. She makes an actual cardboard mug and pours orange juice into it. It makes a mess. And so having her walk towards the different scenes in that video, that was the most complicated part, is just having the puppet's feet look like they're actually walking without getting ourselves in the shot. We were like laying down on top of tables and dangling the feet. It took us so long to figure it out. We were giggling the whole time because it was just so ridiculous, the positions we were trying to get in. And I think we only got like a second worth of video that actually looks like the puppet's walking. And I think that was probably, to date, one of our most complicated shots. And again, it was just, my sister, who is not a puppeteer, our friend, who is definitely not a puppeteer, and she just was along for the ride. But we had so much fun doing it, so it was worth it.
Well, and I'm sure that comes through in the video too, like how much fun it was to make. Another character I want to ask about, you have so many great characters, is Baby Chester. Where did the idea for Baby Chester come from?
Baby Chester. Oh, man. Baby Chester was built by Cynthia. I'll have to look up her last name. I don't remember. She's an artist in Mexico. She's a puppet builder. And the minute I saw Baby Chester, I said, I need that puppet. He needs to be in our classroom. He is just the cutest little thing. And so when he first arrived, again, shortly before the pandemic, so I didn't really get to use him in the classroom too much, and we hadn't found his personality. We didn't know yet who he was. So he kind of went through some phases where he was kind of more gruff and he was more adult, I was like, well, because of the way that I use my puppets, each one kind of gets assigned a different subject. So I had Julio for Spanish, Florange for French. I had Alexa for the social emotional component, where she gets to misbehave in class and show the kids the consequences of misbehaving and that kind of thing. She talks about feelings a lot. And so I thought, okay, well, then Chester needs a place as well. How about we make him our science guy? So we stuck him, I was pulling him out during science lessons. And then I was like, I remembered a lesson that I always gave my students, the ones that are hesitant to, like, oh yeah, no, science isn't really my thing. And I go, but you've been doing it since you were a baby. And they're like, what? And I go, you've been a scientist since you were a baby. You were testing stuff out. When you feed a baby and you put them in a high chair, what do? They drop their stuff and they test that hypothesis. They're like, is it going to drop again? Is it going to drop again? What happens if I drop this other object? Is it also going to drop? And so, they giggled along to that. And I'm like, you've been doing science. It's the same thing. We're just experimenting. Just go ahead and drop the spoon is what we say. And so that's where the idea of the character of baby Chester came from. So now we had a literal baby in the classroom that we could have messing around and testing physics, basically, climbing things, doing dangerous stuff. And of course, the kids are giggling the whole time when I have Chester climbing up the bookshelf, like, no, Chester, you're going to fall, that kind of thing. And then during the pandemic, it helped out so much to keep that engagement via Zoom when we were doing lessons on friction. And I have Chester playing with Hot Wheels, and he's like, it's not working because it's going on a carpet. And so we talk about like the different surfaces and different ways that friction interacts with what we're trying to get it to go. We want it to go faster, you want it to go further, that kind of thing. So Chester took some time to develop, and he kind of was found more than anything. We discovered the character of Chester, but he's such a cute puppet. Like, she just made such an adorable little puppet that people are just drawn to him. And so once we found his voice, and there's a video that I have where I'm playing around for, I think it took us a couple of hours, where I'm just like testing different voices up and down. And we landed on this funny little slide, like speech impediment. And all of a sudden we're like, there, that's him. That's Chester. So
I love it. Yeah, he is super, super cute puppet.
thanks.
Well, one thing, like kind of looking through your website and your YouTube and stuff like that, and your Instagram and Facebook, which are all fantastic, by the way, because
thank you.
Well, we'll talk about. I have a question about that I'll get to in a second, but I really love that you really you started in puppets like 2014 with this nanny thing, building the first version of Alexa, and then you really like jumped in, and I love that you just explore all different kinds of puppetry too. It's not just all Muppet style or anything like that. And so I want to ask you about a few things. You went to this, or you took the Stan Winston School of Puppetry with BJ Geyer. You took those video courses. Can you talk about your experience? And that was through the guild, right?
That was through the guild. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guild. And I recommend anyone who is interested in puppetry and looking to learn more, go through your guild. There's so many resources available. There's so many different things, books, and just so many different ways that they can help out. And this was one of them. The guild had a membership with the Stan Winston School that they were able to share. And so I was able to do it for a few months and create some puppets through that program, where I chose the BJ Geyer course. But they have, I could have explored any of the different Stan Winston things, creatures and different makeup and different things like that. So yeah, sky's the limit when it comes to what you can explore through a guild.
You don't have to live in the area where the guild is to join the guild. So if these benefits, if you see a guild that has a benefit you want, you could probably join that guild and get that benefit.
Absolutely. And it's so worth it. I think most guilds are like $25 for the whole year.
Yeah.
And yeah. And like you said, now that technology is where it's at, you can be part of a guild anywhere. I'm part of like 5 of them, I think, now.
Yeah, me too. Did you find that the Stan Winston, those courses were a worthwhile resource in your building? Like, did you learn a lot from them?
I learned so much, mostly mechanisms. I hadn't explored or played around with mechanisms. I was a little hesitant to do so, but having those videos to kind of walk me through it gave me the confidence to just jump into it and test it out. And again, with puppetry, one of the amazing things is that there's so many different ways you can do it. And so this was just BJ Geyer's ways, and testing it out and finding ones that you like, that you're drawn to, or versus like, okay, now I tried carving foam and maybe that's not my thing, right? So, and not to say that I don't enjoy carving foam, but I'm just saying as an example, if you test it out, now you can further refine your personal style.
And you also went to Las Vegas to the land school, right? Like, you went out there and studied out there. What were you studying out in Vegas?
I did. Yeah, the land school was set up so that Scott Land could show his marionette skills and pass those along and kind of grow the art that way. And it was really cool. They had Dave Herzog out from Chicago, and he had pre-crafted all of these wooden puppets that were just blank. It was just a generic mold puppet that he had created. And I think there were 15 or 16 of us in the class. And we spent the first day just painting them. And Dave had also sewn costumes, like over 30 costumes, so that we could have options for what we wanted to dress our puppets as. And once we chose our costume, we kind of had our colors. We just spent the first day just painting and creating. And then the second day was stringing. And I believe it was 3 days. And the third day was learning how to manipulate it. And I had, up until that point, never touched a marionette, except for the ones like in Mexico, the little cheapy wooden ones that they sell right at the border. I learned a lot through that lesson. We also had demonstrations. We had woodworking demonstrations, which I've never done that before. And so it was a really, really worthwhile program. And I got to do that through the Mark Dunworth Foundation, also in Chicago. And they were the ones that gave me the scholarship so that I could go out and do that. And then there was another course, also in Vegas at the Land School, but this was for ventriloquists. And so they signed me up for that as well. I got to do that and met Valentine Vox, who wrote a book on ventriloquism. Actually, I've gone a third time now that I think about it. We made a trapeze marionette, again with Dave Herzog. And yeah, there's just so much to learn. There's so many different avenues to explore in puppetry in all the different forms.
Yeah, well, and hand puppets, ventriloquism, marionettes. You have a video about lambe lambe on your YouTube channel. You have a kamishibai, which I had never heard that name before, but like that's too. Do you have a favorite style that you like to work in, or do you just love using elements from all these different styles together?
I think the latter. Yeah, I think it's the exploration. I've always dabbled. I've always been one to like, oh, that's a cool hobby. I want to try that. But you end up, purchasing a bunch of items and you try it out, and then, you give up on that hobby a few months later, and then you switch over to something else. And so here in puppetry, I found this beautiful umbrella that kind of covered all of it. So for that first class that I did at Land School, they did a drawing for one of the marionettes that Dave had made, and this one had moving eyes and a moving mouth. And I won that drawing. I was able to bring that puppet home, and I was able to create all of it. I did the costume for it. I created the little wig for it, and for that I did crochet. So I crocheted a wig for it, and so she's got like yarn hair. And so just pulling from all these different hobbies that I've kind of accumulated over the years, but being able to put it under the umbrella of puppetry, that's one of my favorite things is that, and I think it was Jamie who said he made that Rasputin video.
Oh, Jamie Shannon.
Jamie Shannon, thank you.
Yeah.
So in one of, the Under the Puppet episode with Jamie Shannon, he had talked about making that Rasputin video, and he could go as lavish as he wanted because it was so small. And so you were able to pull all these elements of opulence and everything, but because it's little, it stays under budget. And I found that to be the case as well. All these different hobbies and all these different techniques and all these different things, you can pull from those and apply them in different ways depending on what you need. And so we did a shoot once. I got to do a music video for Glitter Wizard. And there was a shot that they wanted where they wanted the puppet to jump up and kick its legs out. And we ended up doing some marionette strings on the legs so that we can get that puppet to jump up and kick its legs out. So different things apply to different puppets, and it's transferable skills, and all of it just plays well together. I love it.
Yeah, excellent. And just learn as much as you can about all of them.
Absolutely,
because you'll find ways to use it. One thing I wanted to ask you about, because this is something I didn't know this, but like started from the very beginning of your journey, is that you are very good at finding artists to collab with and other people to collab with. And like most recently, Critterosity, if I'm saying that right, Critterosity, and like Honest to Betsy, you recently did a collab with her as well. I would love your advice on how to have a successful collaboration with somebody, because you seem to have a lot of successful collaborations.
Thank you. Yeah, that's been a lot of fun too. I think I come at it with the approach of when you were a kid and you would go to the neighbor kid's house and you knock on their door and you say, can they come out and play? And sometimes it was yes and sometimes it was no. And then sometimes they would come out and play, but they would only stay around for a little while, or they didn't want to play what you wanted to play, and you kind of had to find something that you could do together. I feel like I bring that same approach when I reach out and do collaborations with different artists. And sometimes I see something, I'm like, oh, that looks really, really cool. I want to jump into that. And then they'll say, oh, no, thanks. We're not interested. Fine. That's fine. There's other doors to knock on. So you just kind of go from there. And you never know what's going to come from it either. Actually, Honest to Betsy had been live on TikTok building a puppet. And I said, as soon as she saw me jump on, she goes, wait, puppets, Moddy Puppets, give me some tips, give me some advice. And so I reached out to her that way. I was like, okay, she's willing to play, clearly. So I reached out to her and I said, hey, how would you feel about both of us going live together? And that way I can kind of guide you through the process. And again, you just never know. You have to stay open to possibilities. I'm actually working on another one with the Elika. Actually, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I've only ever seen it written. But the alliance in Oregon that's trying to bring back otters. And because of the little paper otter puppet that I just had made, I had seen Mike Bennett's aquarium in Oregon, and it's just a cartoon aquarium. When I saw his art, I said, hey, do you think we could collab on that? I could use your design. I create a paper puppet. And then he said yes, and I partnered with the Elika Alliance. And so we got in touch there, and we're working on creating those puppets, those little paper puppets, and to bring more awareness to bringing the otters back to the Pacific Northwest.
Excellent. And this is just a great lesson as well. It's like, you reach out to collab with somebody, but now all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's this thing. We're going to do this, project to bring otters back, and if you just sit in your workshop and create puppets and never talk to anybody, those things aren't going to happen for you.
Right.
It's a great lesson to talk to people and to network.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think this goes back to those 6 of us in the drama club back in high school that we did improv because we had so little funding and so little guidance that we were like, okay, well, whose line is it anyways, Big? Let's do one of those here at the high school. And we were able to pull people on that way. And the whole improv thing of yes and. You go into it, I reached out to Mike Bennett and I showed him my otter puppet, and he was the one that pointed me to the Elika Alliance. And so you just never know. You just have to stay open to that, say, oh, okay, yes, and, I had an idea of where we could take this, but if he wanted to take it a different direction, I'm down for that as well. And you just never know where it leads you. I've gotten to do such cool things just by staying open and willing to work in different ways.
When I'm going to interview somebody, I often like to spend time before I talk to them, like looking through their websites or looking up past interviews or articles about them. And I really found that your YouTube channel tells a lot about you and a lot about the different styles that we've talked about that you've created in and stuff like that. But one thing I love about is you have a lot of videos where you talk about your process and how you made something or how you learned ventriloquism and like you even showed like kind of behind the scenes video of trying different voices for a character. Do you find that I don't know what the question is I'm trying to ask here, but like, do you enjoy sharing your process and how you create things with the internet, with the world?
Oh man, yes, I very much enjoy that part of it. I think, and I got this term from Carol Sterling to call myself an educational puppeteer and not just a teacher or a puppeteer. I was like, how do I blend those two together? And it wasn't until I heard her say that, yeah, I'm an educational puppeteer. And I go, yes, that's it. That's what I am. So I think I'm teacher first, and the puppetry just kind of supports all that I do. And it's such a unique and different and playful and fun approach to teaching and learning. And so there's a kind of a meta thing where I'm now teaching the methods that I use to teach. So I got to do a workshop for educators at the Northern California Puppetry Festival. And that's all that it was. It was, here's my method, here's how I teach. I had just done a unit on the flora and fauna of Northern California. And so I was able to present that to teachers. Like when we want to talk about ecosystems and biomes and different things, here's how puppets can support that and make it so much more playful. And, it's not just this rote memorization of facts or just reading from, well, it's not even textbooks anymore. It's all online. Just a bunch of clicking and pointing cursors and watching videos. How do we get the kids, manipulating things, holding things, playing with different textures, different materials, and working on their, frankly, their fine motor skills as well.
Excellent. Well, and another thing that I love that you're very good about, and you show your process in this way too, but is looking through your Facebook page and your Instagram page, even just with your pictures, and you show like kind of behind the scenes pictures, and you're really good at creating kind of posts that people engage with, and like even there was a recent post about Alonzo and the project, and like you were like, "Oh, this didn't quite work out the way," and I love that you're just being honest. You're just like, "Yep, this
Yeah.
is I tried this thing, it didn't work, or I had this and this was a lot of fun." What are sort of your tips and strategy for posting? And do you have a favorite platform you like to post on that really engages with people?
Ooh, good question. I think I don't think that I think very much. I think I feel more than I think. And it's not until I have processed the feelings that then I'm able to kind of synthesize it and be like, here's the lesson that I got from this experience. And that I feel is where my posts kind of take off. And I don't post super regularly. Instagram is my go-to just because it was the very first one the first platform I was on. TikTok has a whole different personality to it, I feel. So although there are some things that cross over and I post to both, I almost create different content for different platforms depending on the vibe of the platform. Yeah, just being honest, being transparent. I learned so much from other puppeteers that have been willing to share and being so open with their craft and everything. And I feel like sharing the failures is just as big a part of it because that's just part of life. You don't always win. You don't always make something that's great. And then sometimes you stumble on something you never expected it to be great, and it takes off and becomes this viral video like the worms that I made, the little caterpillar foam puppets. It's such a simple puppet. Never thought it would do anything, and it's one of my most viral videos. So you just never know.
It's funny because one of my next questions was worms. You make a lot of worm puppets. What? So you answered it perfectly. Just great. You also have a Patreon to help support your work. Have you found that Patreon is successful? Because I know sometimes artists have a different, love-hate relationship with it. So how's Patreon worked for you?
Yeah, Patreon it's like a little bonus. I think I could do better with it if I stayed a little more consistent. The times that I have stayed consistent on it, it has done well. But I don't know. I've got so many different projects going all the time that I kind of tend to forget that Patreon is there, to be honest. I do have my loyal few that have been there from the beginning, and so that's just been nice, consistent income. A few extra 20-30 bucks a month is not going to hurt. So again, the times that I've stayed consistent on it and posted more often, it does do a lot better. So I do recommend it. It is just an option. I wouldn't, I'm not making a living off of Patreon, but it's definitely a good tool to have in your toolbox. So.
Yeah. Well, I often find like if you put stuff out, people want to support you. So having that as an option where people are like, "Oh, sure, I'll give $1 or $2 a month to this person," don't prevent them from giving you $1 a month. Like take
Absolutely,
that $1
yeah.
if
Create
they're
this.
yeah, if they're enjoying your art. Well, we've talked about it a little bit before, but I would love to talk just to touch on the San Francisco Guild and sort of your involvement with the Guild, because you've done a lot of stuff with the Guild. You talked about the Northern California Puppetry Festival, which you were. When I was there, you were running that thing, But let's talk about the Guild and some of the projects you've worked on with the Guild and just the Guild in general.
Yeah, so I got to join the Guild. I have again 2018. And the first workshop was Art Gruenberger doing one of his shows and then having us walk through the process of like creating a show. It just, in about an hour, we were able to make something fun and funny. And it's just such a fun, almost like a sandbox, right? Where you jump in and let's just see what happens. Let's see what comes out of it. Little by little, of course, as I got more involved, I was able to then join the Guild Board of Directors and have a little more input that way and suggest different people that we could talk to or invite different puppeteers to teach their craft or their ideas. So, and especially during the pandemic, we had a lot from further out to join us virtually. So that's how my involvement kind of took off. But yeah, I've gotten to do some really, really cool stuff thanks to the Guild. And we've got the San Francisco Bay Area Puppeteers Guild. We've got some puppeteers that have been doing it for decades. I mean, they were working with the greats. They were working with Sherry Lewis. They were working with Jim Henson. They were working on Fraggle Rock. They were doing all kinds of different things. So just the knowledge and the experience and the wisdom, it's all right there. It's just, they're willing to share it too. So that's the most amazing part. So of course I want to give back to something that I've gotten so much from.
Yeah, and another thing that I think that you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that the guild is involved in, and I know that you have been involved in too, is the puppet fair at Fairyland, because that is another, the puppet theater at Fairyland is historic. But can you tell a little bit about the puppet fair at Fairyland, because it's a pretty fun event.
Absolutely. Yeah, the puppet fair happens in August, and the guild has been a part of it for, I don't even know how many years. But they host a puppet table where we bring in different styles of different puppets from puppeteers that are members of the guild or otherwise, or the ones that are already there at Fairyland. We also host a craft table where it's a make and take project for the families that visit. And what's nice about it is that those days, I mean, Fairyland has grown so much as well, and they're open to practically anyone in the community. It's not always just families with little kids. It's everyone. It's so inclusive that we've got all kinds of people coming, and we've got teenagers that are making their own puppets and they want to have a place to showcase it. And so they bring it to Fairyland and they get to show it off, and we get to, see what they've created and give some pointers and help out that way. So Fairyland is a really, really fun place to be. Puppet fair at Fairyland is my favorite. It's my closeout to the summer. So yeah, every August, that's where you'll find me.
And it was then that you started working on the worm puppets?
I forget which year it was, but Randall Metz at Fairyland had asked the guild specifically for some caterpillar puppets. And I should have asked more questions. I didn't, but I was like, I could probably figure something out. And I had a bunch of foam that was the wrong size. It was the 1 inch thick, which I couldn't really form into puppet heads with the 1 inch thick foam. So I just sliced it up and created these little foam puppets on 2 sticks. And I made about 100 of them. We took them to Fairyland. We colored them with chalk. And that was the make and take project. And then the Swazzle Puppets team, Sean and Patrick, I forget which one of them was, but they had their kids with them. And their kid had been going around the whole park making their little caterpillar puppet crawl on all of the different statues and all the different things. And they posted it on Instagram, I believe. And it took off. And they're like, where can I get one? Where can I get one? That was all the comments. And I go, oh my goodness, this was just like my throwaway pile of foam that I wasn't sure how I was ever going to use. And I just created these things, and it was, fairly quick to do. So I said, all right, well, let's see what happens. And I made some more and I posted them. I think I made 30 that time. They were gone instantly. So then I had them in my classroom, and I said, well, let's see how I can use them in my classroom, because that's usually my testing grounds for all my puppet projects. And I had 2 of my students play fighting with the caterpillars, and I had made them look like scientifically accurate caterpillars. So it was a hornworm and a swallowtail caterpillar, and they were fighting with these. I posted it with the audio of the office where they're doing parkour, and that took off. That was like a viral video, and all of a sudden all of my comments were also, where can I get one? Where can I get one? Where can I get one? So I spent, I don't know, like the next 3 months just making puppets, making little caterpillar puppets, hornworm puppets, swallowtail puppets. Eventually, because I was cranking out so many, I just made blank ones. Just blank puppets, color them yourself. I don't have time, basically. and those did really well as well. So that was a good couple grand that I made off of just those worms.
Wow.
Yeah.
And it shows you kind of the power of putting your stuff out on the internet, because, if that hadn't gone out there, you wouldn't have made it a couple grand.
Absolutely. And then people always ask me too, like, aren't you afraid that they're going to take your idea and do it? And I'm like, I want them to. I will put a tutorial video on how I make the puppets, and they'll still be like, oh, can you send me one? I'll buy one from you. I don't have the tools. I don't have the skills. I don't have the patience. I don't have the time. For whatever reason, they'll still come to you, because, they know now that you're the source of those puppets or of that craft or that object. So even sharing it as much, and again, because I've always worked on such a limited budget from back in my high school days with that $30 budget for the play, to now running my homeschool program and putting on all kinds of productions and things with the kids on such a small budget, I want it accessible to as many people as possible. So if I can teach you how to do it and you can do it on your own, you're either going to trade money for it or you're going to trade time for it. But I'm going to make it available to you because why not?
I love it. Well, I always like to ask at the end of our interviews, what has been the highlight of your puppetry career so far?
The highlight of my puppetry career has been all the people, I think, all of the different puppeteers and creators and artists and everyone that I've met and interacted with and learned from. I mean, nothing beats having good relationships in your life, having good people to call on and be like, hey, do you remember when we did that thing? Do you want to do something similar? And yeah, I don't know that I've done a project in particular. Like, they're just all fun, and it all depends on who you're doing it with and who you're sharing it with. And I think the people are the highlight.
Excellent. Well, Marisol, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show today. I love your enthusiasm for puppetry, and I love your willingness to share with everybody.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Many thanks to Marisol Himmel for being on the show. For links to some of the things we discussed, check out the show notes for this episode number 112, over at underthepuppet.com. And if you'd like to hear even more of my talk with Marisol, it's available to the bonus content patrons over at patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Under the Puppet. I want to send out a special thank you to all of the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who help make this show possible. Patreon patrons at the producer level and above who get a special shout out are Eve Cunning, Kathy Crawford, Tony Urbano, Brandy, David Akers, Lee Thompson, Paul, Ricky Chavez, and Scott Armstrong. To become a patron, visit patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media to set up your monthly pledge today. And thank you for your support. If you have questions, suggestions, or feedback about the show, send them via email to underthepuppet@gmail.com, or you can connect with the show on Instagram or Facebook by searching for Under the Puppet. And don't forget to tell a friend about the show. This episode featured music by Dan Ring and was edited by Steven Staver. Thank you so much for listening. Under the Puppet is copyright 2025 Saturday Morning Media Grant Pachoco, executive producer, all rights reserved. www.saturdaymorningmedia.com. You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.